Hi everybody, welcome back to Ed Psych. So we're asynchronous this week, so you're watching this, hopefully in the comfort of your own home or somewhere else comfortable. And you've done the readings on Piaget and Vygotsky, and we are thinking about cognitive development this week. So this week we're going to talk about the distinctions between assimilation and accommodation. Hopefully this PowerPoint will help you understand that a little bit better. We're going to talk about the difference between concrete and formal operations in adolescent development, and we're going to think about the ways that understanding those ideas will help us as teachers. One way that we're going to do that, I wanted to point out, is that we're going to do that through the forums. So you will get together with a group after reading and watching this in a forum, discuss in a forum, and then take out your final points and put it together as a Word doc and upload it into the Moodle site. Okay, if you have any questions about that, make sure you let me know. Okay, I'm happy to help. Okay, so you read about Piaget, and you understand already probably that he developed the stage theory about different stages of cognitive development for children and what they can do at different stages or times in their lives. It's really important to understand the distinction between development as opposed to intelligence in why a student may or may not be able to do what we're asking them to do. And you can think about that through the film that you saw, Teen Species, where the dance teacher was talking about the ability or the developmental ability to be able to dance. You can think about it if you're a music teacher, thinking about a student being able to perform with the instrument that you're giving them or perform a certain piece. If you're a science teacher, you might think about, or a math teacher, you might think about the ways in which students understand abstract content, or whether they need the actual, physical thing in the room with them in order to work with it. And I think it's important also just to remember that children are trying to make sense out of this very puzzling world that we live in, and they might not always have the cognitive tools yet. When they are able to make sense out of it, they do it in two ways, and they do it through organization and adaptation. We are going to use organization in the definition as the ability to organize information into intelligible systems, combining events, actions, thoughts, or schemes, or schemata. And schemes are just basically the organizations of actions that become generalized or become understood over time with repetition. And you can think about the school day. My middle schoolers up until now have stayed in one class with one teacher, with the occasional art teacher or music teacher coming in, but they've stayed there. The teachers kind of directed. Now they're in middle school and they change class to class to class, right? So they move through the day, remembering schedules, remembering different teachers' assignments, remembering different teachers' rules. So that's their scheme, okay? Organization is ongoing. So it's the combining of these events and thoughts and actions into intelligible systems. We're doing it all the time. Okay, adaptation takes two forms, assimilation and accommodation. And assimilation is the process of understanding events by matching their features with our already existing schemes. Okay, so we make sense by having things fit already. Accommodation is the process of altering those schemes to make assimilation happen. So things that might not otherwise fit into the scheme, we have to alter them. Okay, and one way to think about this is children. Children are assimilating and accommodating all the time. If you have a kid, if you're a parent, you've seen this over and over in all kinds of forms, right? Banging. A baby has something and they bang it against a hard surface, right? Then they pick up a different thing. Maybe it's soft or maybe it's square like in this, and they incorporate new objects into the scheme and see what happens. And then maybe in this case they grab an egg. It's not always an egg, luckily at my house. But when accommodation happens, when the new object doesn't fit into the existing scheme. In this case, the egg goes all over the place, right? Nothing so far has happened to go all over the place, right? It's just made different sound or had a different texture, right? But if that example didn't help, maybe this one will. When I think about assimilation and accommodation, I think about greetings, right? Greetings, we understand them, especially in this culture, if they are within a certain scheme, like high five, or a handshake, or a hug. Maybe if you're from Europe, maybe it's a kiss on the cheek, or maybe it's 2 kisses on the cheek, or maybe it's even 3 kisses on the cheek. And I always talk about that in my class with my students. If someone goes to pull you in and you back off, then maybe it's not fitting into your scheme of what a greeting is, right? When I learned Spanish, I learned adios as goodbye. When I lived in Central America, I understood that people were passing me on the street saying adios, adios, and it was close enough that I was able to assimilate that and respond. So then I started saying adios. When I lived in very rural parts of Guatemala, people used the word yos and they said it over and over again. And I just could not make sense of it. For the first month or so, I was looking at them like, what are they saying to me? They keep waving and saying yos, and so I ignored it because I just didn't have a match. I couldn't really put it into my scheme. I didn't even respond. After a while, I did understand they were saying adios, and it just had a little bit off the back and then an N added to the, a little bit off the front and an N added to the back. So then it became clear to me. And then, I accommodated that. I modified my scheme to make it fit. Okay, so multicultural greetings might go into that category. And you can think about different ways that greetings are all over the world. In the Guatemalan highlands, the mom elders, they put their hand like this, and then you are to take it, if you're younger, you're to take it and put it to your head as a sign of respect. Some people kiss on the cheek. In Turkey, the men kind of bash their heads against one another. So you might not have a schema for that, but over time, I think you would be able to make sense of it. If you aren't able to make sense of it, you might be having cognitive disequilibrium or cognitive dissonance. And this is an idea that Vygotsky talked about, right? The zone of proximal development, right? The ZPD, where you want to keep materials challenging just enough that the student can get there, but not so far away from them that they shut down out of frustration. Remember that knowledge is building on what we currently know by adding information to what we already have, so scaffolding, right? It's really important. You can see a question here on the screen that you're going to be working on in your forums, so you don't need to worry about it too much right now, but just so you know, in the forums you're going to talk about how can understanding of assimilation, accommodation, cognitive disequilibrium, and the problem of the matched be used for us as teachers. How can we make sense of that and make it so that we are better teachers? Next, I want to jump briefly into concrete and abstract reasoning, and they're the final two stages of development that Piaget suggested. And if you think about the increased cognitive development that we get as we get older, it sort of is freeing when we think about being able to have just pure thought, being able to be free from the environment because we can imagine, we can have abstract thought. And here's an example of that. In my my children's classroom, they have addition when it's word problems using things that are concrete in my children's world, like apples. So if Alice has 2 apples, Carolyn gives her 3 more. How many apples will Alice have? Well, all the kids in the class know what an apple is. And if they don't, they usually have something there, concrete, that's there for them. Whereas in your science class, you might have a question like this. Imagine there are 2 quantities, which together make up a whole. Okay, if we increase the first quantity, but the whole remains the same, what has happened to the second quantity? Because it's very abstract. There's no something there. There's a quantity which my own children wouldn't understand at this point if I talked to them this way, if I talked about quantities. But if I talk about apples, they can understand it. Okay, I've kind of buzzed through this just because I want you to have just a sort of an overall. What you're going to do is, you've already done the readings. I want you to read the Piaget and Vygotsky notes. I hope they'll be helpful. You're going to work in your forums with this question as well. How can this information help us as we think about abstract and concrete operations as teachers? Okay. You're going to do the water experiment, which is the 4th question on your case study assignment. So if you haven't done 1, 2, and 3, get going. And this will be your 4th one. So anything that relates to the water experiment should be the final of case study number 1. Okay, there's only 4 questions on case study number 1. And remember, I want you to listen to the students, ask open-ended questions, and try to encourage them to think out loud so that you can follow their reasoning. Okay? Remember that the case study assignment is due on Monday, the 24th, and I made it 11:59 p.m. That's what you guys told me was helpful. And then in the following week, this following week, we'll be working on moral reasoning. So as you do the readings, remember to juice the theory. Squeeze everything you can out of it. Okay, hope this has been helpful. Hope you have a great week. Bye.